Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council's special planning committee being held on Tuesday, the 21st of October 2025. My name is Councillor Garth Barnes and I'm the chair of the committee. The meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel, and the recordings of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there are any breaks in transmission in the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. If you are here to make a representation to the meeting, you are consulting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery, and the recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. And please note, a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest exit. Okay, well, we'll start. Item 1 is apologies, and we do have a few, I'm afraid. We have apologies from Councillors Glenn Andrews, Ian Doby, Tony Oliver, and Susan Williams. And I'm assuming, because we had apologies from Jan Foster at the last meeting, due to COVID reasons, we may not have her presence here today, so I'll add those. Okay, item 2 is declarations of interest. Any member with a declaration? No, thankfully, good. And item 3, declarations of independent site visits. Does anybody wish to make a... Nope, okay. There are no public questions at item 4, so we move on to item 5, which is the agenda item that we're here to discuss, which is the land of South of Gloucester Road. So I will ask Nicole Gond if she will introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a proposal which has been with the Council for 3 years. It comprises of up to 1,100 new homes, including a mix of market and affordable housing, and potentially a retirement or extra care accommodation. In addition to this residential development, the proposal also includes a flexible mixed-use area within the community hub, a primary school, a convenience store, a significant amount of green infrastructure, including suitable alternative natural green space, SANG, walking and cycle routes, formal and informal public open space, and sports pitch provision, as well as the associated drainage, utilities, necessary highway works, and accesses. All these matters are reserved except for the accesses. The site is located to the west of Cheltenham and is allocated under policy A7 of the JCS and is south of Old Gloucester Road to the west of Cheltenham. The site sits within both Tewkesbury and Cheltenham's administrative areas, and the boundary line is roughly along the public right-of-way that you walked during the site visit. The site is in flood zone 1, indicating a very low level of flood risk, though areas in the northwest face medium to high risks of surface water flooding. The application site is undeveloped agricultural land with a varying topography, which you saw on the site visit. So the site rises towards the pylon in the centre, and then it gradually goes down towards the south. When this site was allocated, it was established that there would be a considerable amount of physical development in this field. And although concerns remain by the landscape officer, they can be addressed at the detailed design stage. And following extensive review of the LVIA, the visual impacts of this scheme are not deemed significant. Future reserve matters applications, guided by the approved design codes, which will be required by condition, will ensure the landscape considerations are appropriately integrated into the scheme. As this is an outline stage, the landscape and visual impacts of the proposals are considered acceptable. The The Cheltenham Circular Footpath runs north to south, just off centre of the site, alongside several other public rights of way. These are shown on pink here on the map. During the site visit, you walked along the central line there, just past those pylons. A tree survey identified 117 individual trees, 42 tree groups and 57 hedgerows, with no veteran trees present. However, there is a small woodland in the western part of the site, which is protected by a TPO, shown in there in sort of rectangular green. The site achieves more than 10% net biodiversity gain, but it isn't actually caught by the statutory requirement because of the time in which it was submitted. But it does provide extensive biodiversity gain in line with the Golden Valley SPD. This application only forms part of the West Cheltenham strategic allocation. The proposal for this scheme ties to other live applications and an application that this committee has already approved in the south. The LPA has worked extensively with all key partners and statutory consultees to ensure collaboration has taken place across the different land parcels and that the infrastructure needs are delivered for all of the schemes. Whilst in an ideal world, this strategic allocation would be presented to you in its entirety, this is not the case. And the JCS policy specifically provides for this. It recognises that strategic sites are often complex and involve different land ownerships and land promotion. The application, as well as the others already approved by Cheltenham Planning Committee, is supported by an IDP, an Infrastructure Delivery Plan. This IDP outlines the necessary infrastructure for the entire allocation and designates responsibilities for the delivery of each component to the individual applications. I will now run through the key parameter plans that are conditioned on this outline. The predominant land use for the site is residential, accompanied by the associated amenities that support both this application, but more importantly, the broader allocation. You have a local centre here in pink, and this will have a GP surgery and is located centrally in the site. And directly opposite these facilities, there is land set aside for a primary school. To the west of the primary school, there will be sports pitches, serving not only this allocation, this site, but the wider allocation. And then running through the centre of the site will be a piece of open space located beneath the existing pylons you saw on the site visit, and at the western edge there is another large area of open space. The building heights plan indicates that the northern tip of the site is designated for a maximum of 3 stories along Old Gloucester Road. Additionally, there's a circular element that could form a crescent, and this is permitted to go up to 4 stories. In the centre of the site, what currently is called the main street in the design access statement, is a large linear piece of open space, and this is allowed to go up to 4 stories. Additionally, the neighbourhood opposite Headley Road is limited to 3 stories. The potential implications of these heights, such as overshadowing or an overbearing impact on neighbouring residences, will be evaluated during the detailed design stage at Reserve Matters. The Green and Blue Infrastructure Plan outlines a significant area dedicated to green spaces, particularly in the form of semi-natural grassland. Drainage areas are shown, and these are scattered throughout the site and primarily in the open space areas beneath the pylons, which also show drainage locations. Each residential block is designated with suggested areas for play areas, and there is a key sang area to the west of the site. Another key feature of this plan is the dark corridor that runs along the centre of the site, following the path of the pylons. And to enhance this corridor, a buffer zone will be established. Additionally, the southern tip of the plan includes an area designated for allotments, shown by the yellow star there, and planning conditions will determine when these facilities will be provided and will stipulate their required sizes. The Green and Blue Infrastructure Plan is supported further by the Illustrative Open Space Plan. This plan also highlights a significant amount of natural and semi-natural green spaces, but further details where the parks and garden areas, including play provision and the formal sports facilities, will be. It also incorporates the allotments, and the plan contains a table outlining the open space standards, demonstrating how the proposal complies with policy requirements in terms of the type and quantity of the green space being proposed. The access and movement strategy outlines the main vehicle access points for this development, which will consist of 2 junctions from Old Gloucester Road. Additionally, there'll be another junction that accesses the adjacent development, the HBD North application. And then there's a third access onto Henley Road that designates exclusively for buses, cyclists and pedestrians, so cars will not be allowed to use this access, and this has been done to prevent rat running through the site. The plan retains the existing rights of way that run north to west and south to east along the pylon corridor, and extensive footpaths are also provided, creating interesting and diverse walking routes throughout the open space for pedestrians. All roads will feature adjacent cycle routes, and there are additional cycle paths that lead into the open spaces for more leisurely cycling. There are a host of active travel works, which are shown in detail within the transport assessment. Close engagement has taken place with both Active Travel England and the local highway authority, who support this package of works. So when you look at all these parameter plans together, you have the illustrative master plan, and I will just walk through a couple of extracts now from the design and access statement that articulates the illustrative master plan. There will be 5 distinct character areas, and these are shown in the DAS, and these will be covered by 2 design codes, which will be secured by a condition. The design codes will break down these character areas even further and prescribe an extensive level of detail that the reserved matters will need to follow. As we've already touched on, there's on-site sport provision, where they'll provide a grass playing pitch for youth, junior and mini soccer, providing 2 times youth 11 by 11 and 2 times mini soccer 7 by 7, plus a pavilion and some car parking. A sustainability and energy strategy was initially submitted in October 2022. And throughout the whole application process, officers have collaborated with the applicant to review and enhance the environmental standards. The applicant has completed the Climate Change SPD checklist, which can be reviewed to show the detailed breakdown against our metrics in the Cheltenham Climate Change SPD. And some key features to note are the net zero carbon by 2030 for operational carbon emissions. They have an energy strategy that aligns with the B lean, B clean and B green hierarchy. Air source heat pumps will be used, solar panels, and there will be no connection to the gas grid, and this is further clarified by condition. And they are in the pursuit of Building with Nature accreditation, which they'll do throughout the detailed design process. Here are a list of all the key planning issues that have been extensively addressed in detail within the officer report. And these key issues have been addressed to the satisfaction of key consultees. But of particular note today is the affordable housing levels in this case, which I'll just touch upon. An independent viability assessment has been undertaken, and the balance between affordable housing and the Section 106 has been challenged extensively by officers. After the Section 106 prioritisation exercise and a slight adjustment in the affordable housing tenure mix to shared ownership and social rent in a 50-50 split, the Council's independent viability assessor has re-evaluated the appraisals and has determined the site could provide 22.91% affordable housing. So that is 252 affordable units. Additionally, the applicant has stated they do not accept a review mechanism in the Section 106. This is fully detailed in the officer report, and in the individual circumstances of this planning application, officers consider that there are planning reasons to accept as a matter of planning judgment that the application should not be refused for failure to agree to the viability review mechanism. These reasons include the interrelationship with this application site and the other planning applications within the wider strategic allocation. If this application were to be refused solely for the failure to provide a viability review mechanism, it may cause significant delay and undermine the infrastructure, housing and employment land delivery of the wider strategic allocation. In these circumstances, instead of seeking a viability review mechanism, officers consider a pragmatic alternative is to reduce the time period for submission of the reserve matters. However, it is acknowledged that if market conditions change, there will be no mechanisms to secure additional affordable housing. The application proposal plays a significant role in the West Cheltenham strategic allocation and is a key component of the adopted JCS spatial strategy, with the principle of development already tested via JCS examination. Delivering this site provides substantial benefits, including addressing the urgent need for housing, including affordable housing, within the allocated plan period and beyond, by providing 1,100 homes on an allocated site. Generating the economic benefits through on-site employment and during the construction phases, and providing infrastructure for the wider allocation, these being the primary school, sports fields, community centre and GP surgery. However, it's not surprising that development proposal of this scale raises various issues and concerns, leading to potential tensions and conflicts with other policy interests. Consequently, a considerable amount of time has been invested in reviewing, assessing and refining the submission documents to understand and shape the necessary mitigation strategies. These strategies are intended to ensure that the new homes, community uses and other components of this development are capable of being sustainable. The process included extensive discussion with consultees regarding the planning obligations needed to make the development acceptable from a planning perspective. And the Golden Valley SPD sets a very high standard for development. And while this proposal aligns with the overarching objectives, it does not meet all the criteria of the Golden Valley SPD in a line-by-line comparison, particularly the lack of employment on the site and the reduced affordable housing provision. Officers have also adopted a balanced and pragmatic approach to planning matters and the Section 106 obligations, striving to create an appropriate mix of the Section 106 contributions and the suitable level of affordable housing for existing and future Cheltenham residents. Although this scheme does not provide the 35% affordable housing required by the JCS, an extensive and robust review of the viability has established that the affordable level this site can provide is 22.91%, and a pragmatic solution has been reached on the viability review mechanism. The Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act mandates that the proposals be determined in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The Town and Country Planning Act requires that decision makers consider the provisions of the development plan relevant to the application and any other material considerations. Here, the NPPF is an important material consideration. Paragraph 11D, tilted balance, does apply here, such that the balance is that planning permission should be granted unless any adverse impacts will significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the NPPF when taken as a whole. Having particular regard to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, securing well-designed places, and providing affordable homes. The benefits of this proposal are clear and have been outlined by officers and collectively would be significant in their degree and the positive weight to be given to them. Furthermore, the proposal would align with key policies of the NPPF to direct development to sustainable, allocated locations, making effective use of land and providing affordable homes. The proposal would therefore accord with the policies of the NPPF taken as a whole. As such, officers conclude, even with the reduced level of affordable housing, that the adverse impacts of granting planning permission do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of this allocated site, and no grounds for refusal have been identified. As such, approval is recommended by officers. The recommendation contains a comprehensive schedule of planning conditions. These conditions aim to mitigate the impacts of development and ensure the delivery of sustainable development that complies with the requirements of the JCS, as well as the border spaces strategy. Significant effort has gone into the collaboration documents and within these conditions to create a cohesive overall allocation when considering all 4 current applications in West Cheltenham. On Monday, you will have had a late update in terms of the conditions. That's because we had a discussion with the applicants post publishing, and there have been some small amendments. None of them are particularly great, but it's worth noting that condition 5, we discussed the timing. So we usually for this type of site, you'd allow 10 years for the reserved matters to be submitted, but we reduced that to 6 years as the review mechanism already touched on. However, the applicants made a valid point in that if Junction 10 is delayed for any reason, those 6 years would be incredibly tricky in terms of delivery. So some wording has been added onto the end of that condition, such that if J10 was delayed, they're given slightly more time to build out their site. The recommendation by officers is set out in the officer report and is seen above here. Please note there's an error in paragraph B in that in the report it says 7.33 when it should say 7.331 as it's much deeper into the report, the section 106 elements. And there's also another error right at the end of the report where the Golden Valley SPD checklist is completed. The contents of the checklist are correct to this application. However, it's labelled south when it should be labelled north. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nicole. And can I thank you for the extensive and comprehensive introduction to that site. And can I thank you, Nicole and Paul Instone, for all the hard work you've done in bringing this to the committee. It's an extensive piece of work and a very important part of our future planning concerns. So thank you very much indeed for all that hard work. I do have 2 public speakers, and the first I can ask is Nick Matthews, who is the applicant's representative. You have 5 minutes, Nick, and I will remind you 30 seconds towards the end that you're coming to your close.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. My name is Nick Matthews. I'm a director at Savills, the planning advisors to MLPL and Brighton STM on the application before you. The application is the culmination of many years' work through a comprehensive pre-application process and subsequent to the application being submitted. Through close collaboration, working with your officers, statutory consultees, and the other parties within the West Cheltenham allocation, we have developed proposals which will deliver a significant proportion of the new homes anticipated in the Golden Valley SBD through a high quality and sustainable mixed-use development. Will not just connect to the other land within the allocation, but will help facilitate the delivery of the allocation as a whole, and which will provide the majority of the supporting community infrastructure and open space for the allocation, benefiting not only the new residents, but existing residents of the wider communities in the western side of Cheltenham. In the time I have, I just wanted to expand briefly upon those 3 points. On the first, the application proposals include the provision of up to 1,100 homes. This will include a mix of different types, sizes and tenures to meet the diverse need for housing. The new homes will meet modern fabric standards for energy efficiency to reduce heating demands. Solar panels will be provided on suitable roof spaces to generate electricity on site. All homes with parking will have electric car charging points, and there will be no gas, as you have heard. All of the homes will be heated with air source heat pumps. The new market and affordable homes provided through the development would therefore be modern, energy efficient, and consequently have low running costs for the new residents. On the second point, our clients, the other developers within the allocation and your officers, have put a great deal of effort into a collaborative and coordinated approach to the master planning of the allocation. The allocation-wide illustrative master plan and infrastructure delivery plan will ensure that all of the necessary infrastructure is delivered in the right location, regardless of land ownership, and delivered in a timely fashion. You'll be able to see from the IDP that MLPL and Brighton STM are making a significant contribution to the wider infrastructure needs of the allocation. There are 2 specific items which I just wanted to highlight. The first is that the application is making a considerable contribution to the Junction 10 works on the M5, works that will cost, over £5 million is the contribution from this application. Second, this application is absorbing the full costs of all of the additional odour mitigation works required to deliver the allocation. This is not a cost that is being split equally between the landowners and developers within the remainder of the allocation and impacting upon their viability. It is being funded in full to the tune of approximately £4.5 million by MLPL and Brighton STM. Finally, alongside the new homes, the development will deliver the social and community infrastructure to meet the day-to-day needs of the new residents and help foster a strong community spirit. There is a community hub in the heart of the site, which we expect to incorporate a shop, a cafe and other facilities. As part of the community hub, the development will provide a doctor's surgery, the details of which have been coordinated with the NHS so that the surgery is sized to meet the needs of all residents across the allocation. There is a new primary school located adjacent to the community hub and well connected through the active travel network to the homes that it will serve. In relation to open spaces, the application proposals incorporate a wide range of leisure and recreation provision, including the majority of the land needed to deliver the new playing pitches and changing facilities. It will incorporate new parks, destination children's play spaces and allotments for residents with green fingers. And importantly, it will provide 21 hectares of suitable alternative natural green space, which is required to mitigate the impact of the increased population.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. On the Cotswold Beechwood SAC. All of this is being delivered on site and will provide a valuable recreational resource for existing and new residents of the area alike. In summary, the application proposals will deliver an attractive and sustainable development with new homes, facilities and open spaces, whilst also delivering the infrastructure needed across the wider allocation. We implore, therefore, the committee to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry. One moment. And now can I ask Councillor Jeffries, please come forward. You have 5 minutes. You know the score.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here as a representative of Springbank, a neighbouring community that stands to be directly affected by this application. I've said this before to committee members, I think, but Springbank is a proud and tight-knit area. We look out for each other, but we've also faced long-standing challenges: overstretched services, not enough accessible green space, and a lack of truly affordable housing. These aren't just planning concerns, these are daily realities for people I represent. So when we look at this application, we don't just see new homes. We see a rare opportunity, a chance to deliver real, lasting benefit to communities like ours that have gone without for too long. And that's why we support this application, and we respectfully urge the committee to approve it. One of the most important elements is the commitment to green space. Open areas throughout the site, you've seen the maps on the screen, the recreation grounds and the sports pitches. In Springbank, we know how vital that is. When you don't have a garden or where money is tight, safe public spaces make all the difference. They support mental health, help families stay active, give young people something positive to do, and build community pride. These spaces aren't a luxury, they're essential. They are where people meet, where children play, and where memories are made. And they're especially important in places where private outdoor space is out of reach. So we also strongly welcome the plans for a new GP surgery in the community hub. Our local health services are already under huge pressure. We regularly hear from residents who struggle to get appointments, who are travelling too far or waiting too long. And this new surgery can ease that burden, not just for the new residents on this development and in this application, but for the wider area too. And the community hub. That's where local life happens. A place for groups, childcare, learning, advice, events. In Springbank, we understand this. Our own community group is at the heart of the neighbourhood. These kinds of facilities don't just support residents, they help knit a community together. But they must come early, not as an afterthought. Now, we also support the focus on affordable housing, because in Springbank, this is a crisis we live with every day. Young people forced out, families stuck in unsuitable homes, older residents with nowhere to downsize. This development must deliver a real mix of homes so that Cheltenham remains inclusive and fair. Now, I did have a whole section, colleagues, written about how we should change the whole planning system so that affordable housing doesn't lose out, but I could go off at a tangent for an hour or two, so I left that at home. In closing, this application has the potential to make a real difference, not just for future residents, but for communities like Springbank. Please approve it, so those who need it most truly benefit. And finally, I want to thank St Modwyn's and MLPL and their respective teams for years of engagement, community events, and community conversations. I've had so many, and the community is, well, really grateful for those. Now, they haven't been able to deliver every wish or every view that was expressed, but they have listened, and this application is better because of it. So I urge you to approve this application. Like the recent Golden Valley decision, this is an opportunity for generational change, a development that can make a real difference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Okay, so now we're open to members' questions to the officers. Councillor Wheeler.
Looking the wrong way now. Yes, I've got 2 questions. Firstly, now I was a member of Rights Away on the County Council. I was a keen rambler, and I have walked the paths on this estate many times. I've done the circular challenge several times. And I'd really like to know what the nature of these paths were. My concern is I would hate them to be turned into just a footpath. I think there's a very poor example of how things can go wrong. If you look at the footpath that runs up the side of the school off Springbank Way, that has caused a lot of concern over the years. Because it's hemmed in between the school and back gardens, it's not open. The pictures, artist's impression you have, artist's impressions always look wonderful. if we've got paths that are like that are nice paths, you know, I don't want to see these paths lost, but I do want them to be both safe and attractive to walk along. So that was my one question. And, oh yes, reserve matters. Will this be coming back to council for the reserve matters? Because, to be honest, an outline application doesn't often give us a lot of concerns, because it's a case of, should we build houses here? And the answer usually comes back, yes, we want houses and this is a suitable place to put them. But where the problems do come is, what are those houses going to look like? Where are we going to park our cars? Where are we going to put our dustbins? And where are the children going to play? These reserve matters, these are where there's often, sometimes a fairly simple solution in the drawing, but as councillors, as people that have sat on planning, we've seen where it's gone wrong, and I feel that when it comes back for reserve matters, without criticising officers, sometimes we have found in the past where it's gone wrong. If they come back to for reserve matters, we do get the chance of looking at it and say, well, yes, I like it, but what about that little bit there? So yes, will it be coming back for reserve matters?
You happy to answer?
So I'll address the public right of way comment firstly. I was hoping the illustrated maths one popped back up. But so the public rights of way, they have used them as a constraint in their sort of design access statements to align them where they are putting the green space. So you've got the circular one, which they've aligned with a strip of green space. And then you've got some that sort of transect along that pylon corridor, as I explained. That's also a big piece of green space. So how you'll, experience those public rights of way, currently, as you know, it's a little bit difficult underfoot for some people in those agricultural fields. In the future, those would be more formal in nature, but they would certainly coincide with green space. But it's important to remember, as you touched on, this is an outline application, so we can only go by what they've said in their illustrative master plan and their design access statement. But certainly at reserve matters, you'd envision those public rights of way coming forward in alignment with both of those documents, which currently show them as part of green space, and they would be functional and usable for everyone, opposed to just narrow pathways running through a housing estate. So secondly, the reserve matters point. Those applications could be called to planning committee like others, if there was reason to do so. And so that's entirely within members' gifts in the future, or councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Steinhardt?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. One of which is that during your presentation you mentioned that there weren't enough level of employment appropriate to what that which was aspired to in the whole system. I wonder if you could tell me, has there been any work on that, or is it just a sort of guess that employment availability is just low and therefore it's not going to come up to what was expected? That was one. The other one was there's been a lot of debate about odour and odour mitigation, and it was mentioned that 4.5 million was being spent. Do we know how that the mitigation of that is timed within the whole process of the building over that period of time? Is that very quickly done, or is that over a period of years or whatever? So that was the second thing. The third thing was a minor thing, having been a GP. There is a GP set up to cope with the whole of the development. Councillor Jeffreys mentioned that there would be excess capacity for people in Springbank. I'm not sure whether that is true or possible, but I don't know whether there's any work being done on that. Thanks.
So firstly, the employment element. So the Golden Valley SPD is incredibly ambitious with the level of employment that it seeks at this site. It mainly sought along the main street running centrally through the site that there will be a considerable amount of mixed use, so quite a lot of commercial mix of residential. However, that is not the application before us, and it's not what the applicant proposes. So when, officers came to review all of this, we're incredibly mindful of, the tilted balance does apply here. We do not have a 5-year housing land supply, and therefore a considerable amount of residential accommodation this scheme was providing, in officers' minds, did offset that non-compliance with the SPD in terms of employment. It's also important to remember that this application supports the HBD Southern parcel, which doesn't have some of the, the sports pitches, the GP surgery, because an incredible amount of space down there, as you saw from the last committee, is designated for employment space. And therefore, it's not unrealistic to assume in the future, if you did live in this scheme, you could seek employment in the lower part of this allocation. So the allocation is still, compared to your normal, allocation, doing a lot of employment. It's just this particular application does lack what the SPD was seeking, which is to its detriment, but on balance, officers have found it to be acceptable. So the odour mitigation, there are 3 specific conditions listed in the recommendation. And these were created with the applicant, and we also ourselves as the LPA sought an external odour specialist, and they helped us with these very specific conditions that essentially they stop the applicant occupying beyond a certain number of dwellings before they do these works. So it's in their interest to do them as soon as possible, really. If not, their site would be quite stagnated for some time. Those conditions also require them to not only do the works, but then validate the works to show they work, and the elements that need to be taken out of the odour zone have been, in fact, done so. So officers are satisfied those conditions are strong enough to ensure and provide enough incentive for the applicant to do those works quite swiftly. And the applicant, you may have seen last week, they provided a supplementary letter providing members and officers with additional insurance on their sort of commitment to doing those works and bringing this site forward. And then lastly, on the GP surgery, the infrastructure for individual applications, we can obviously only require them to mitigate their own impacts. However, in this case, this scheme not only is mitigating its own impact in terms of healthcare providers, but it is also looking at the wider allocation and providing additionality there. To my knowledge, it doesn't, from conversations with the NHS, it doesn't consider that it's providing additionality for the wider area. But that's not to say that in the future those people couldn't prescribe to that GP surgery, they wouldn't be restricted, because that's not how the system works.
Thank you. Any other member for questions? Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. I must apologise. My work laptop has gone winky and I can't access the papers, so this might be semantics. But the applicant said, and it might just be semantics here, that solar panels would be installed on suitable roofs. And I can't read anything at the moment. I'm sorry. Are they all having solar panels there?
So not necessarily. There's a condition on the recommendation that states all the reserve matters will align with their energy strategy, which has certain targets in it. And as we know, some dwellings, they just might not lend themselves to solar panels, and it might be that they use a slightly more fabric first approach in terms of the fabric they're using. And obviously you would have an air source heat pump anyway. And it might be, so it's not that every dwelling would have solar panels as a sort of whitewash blanket approach, but it would be where they're suitable to achieve those targets. And that will be scrutinised at reserve matters, because we always look at the orientation, and it might be that the layout's tweaked to provide slightly more solar panels, or it's felt that on balance, when you look at it all, they're still achieving their targets. But that condition is there to make the reserve matters stand up to those standards.
Thank you. Councillor Bamford?
Thank you, Chair. Really positive report. Lots of fantastic things being delivered by this scheme, and many thanks to the officers for setting those out so clearly. but it does only deliver about 2/3 of the of our 30% requirement for affordable housing. And whilst I can understand the difference to some extent, Junction 10 and so forth, I wonder if Nicole could give a sort of line by line justification. I mean, some justification for why there's such a gap between what we'd like and what we got in this instance. Thanks.
So each application is very different. So this is certainly not sort of setting a standard or a precedent in terms of percentage. It's very much this application and the consequences of it have resulted in that number. So we've had months and months of extensive conversations in terms of the viability review, and there's been a lot of pushback from officers and extensive discussion between our expert viability consultant and theirs. But I think particularly here, it's the extent of infrastructure that the applicant has touched on that they have to provide to bring this site forward. And fundamentally, for them to bring it forward, unfortunately, they cannot achieve the 35%. So we have the Junction 10 ask is quite considerable. So that is 5 million. Alongside that, there's a suite of active travel works, quite extensive roadworks along Old Gloucester Road, and then others as well. The site itself, you know, some large, considerable junctions, considerable large roads, the GP surgery, providing extensive land for the primary school. Sports pitches are quite heavy in their consumption of land. Something that wasn't around at the JCS stage as well is SANG. So developers have to give over a considerable amount of open space. And this application, to its credit, provides it all on site, so the people will immediately be able to leave their homes and access that SANG. But the consequence for the applicant is obviously far less deliverable land in terms of housing by providing all of that open space. And that's essentially what results in the outcome. And we as officers can just assure you that a robust assessment has occurred, and that is the best outcome officers could achieve.
Thanks. I think that's a very thorough justification. I'm just aware that we have faced criticisms in the past. So I'm hoping that, well, unfortunately, the person at the bench behind me isn't here, but I'm hoping they might listen to the transcript. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions to the officers? In which case, I think we'll move on then to the member debate. Any member wishes to comment? Ooh, that's unusual. Okay. In that case, I presume that you're happy to go to the vote. I don't think there's anything for Nicole to come back on because you've answered all the questions. So we will go to the vote. I mean, this is a really critical application, along with a lot of other recent critical applications that we've got. It's a really important planning opportunity for Cheltenham, and to provide the Junction 10, which I think is often sort of pushed to the one side. I think clearly the housing side of things is extremely critical. It will help with our 5-year land supply. Unfortunately, not as much for affordable housing as we would like. But as you've heard from Nicole, you know, the reasons for that, and I think that's justified. So I would suggest that members might like to vote positively for this application, because I think the work that has gone into it clearly is right, and it will deliver what we need for the future. So I will go through the recommendation, because I think it's an important application and I need to read it to you. So the officer recommendation is to delegate authority to the head of planning to permit the application to A, the conditions set out or substantially similar to as may be agreed under delegated authority given to the head of planning, and B, completion of a S106 obligation and/or other legal documents to deliver the infrastructure and other mitigation as set out at this report at paragraph 7.330 and 7.331, and for alterations to S106 heads of terms, as may be agreed under delegated authority given to the head of planning in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the planning committee. C, in the event the S106 obligation and/or other legal documents remain unsigned 9 months after this resolution, that the application is reviewed by the head of planning in consultation with the chair and vice chair of planning committee, and if no progress is being made, delegated authority is given to the head of planning to refuse the application in the absence of an agreed 106 agreement. Is that all clear to everybody? You have it written in front of you, but I would then ask you, if you're happy with that, to vote either for, against, or abstain. So that is everybody who has voted, and it is a unanimous vote in favour of the application under those recommendations. Thank you all very much indeed. So, I don't think that there's much more to say, apart from my repeated thanks to the officers all involved. There's a tremendous amount of back work on these applications over a long, long period of time. And I know it takes a toll on officers, so thank you very much for all the work. And not just the planning officers, all the other officers involved as well, and indeed the county officers who are around as well. Thank you all very much indeed, and I close the meeting.